In the previous video, we looked at two complex fractions, the easiest one and then one that was a little bit more complicated. And I did not do this very last fraction. So in this video, I am going to do the more challenging complex fraction. So remember, a complex fraction, in the numerator I have some sort of fraction going on, just the sum of fractions in this case, and in the denominator I have the difference of fractions. So if you remember from before, I'm going to do this in parts. So I have to be very systematic. I'm first going to get a common denominator in the numerator, and then I'm going to get a common denominator in the denominator. So let's look at our numerator first. So I'm actually going to make sure I write that out as a numerator. And I'm going to have x minus 2 over x plus 2 over x plus 1. So in order to add these, I have to have common denominators, which means I have to multiply each fraction by the number 1, but it's a special number 1. So I'm going to look at the denominator. This denominator needs an x, and this denominator needs an x plus 1. Okay, so that means now I have a common denominator. Let me see, I'm going to, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to write it. I'm going to write it over here, which is going to be x times x plus 1. And then in my numerator, I have x plus 1 times x minus 2 plus 2x. So now I have to simplify my numerator, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply these together, my two binomials. So when I multiply those together, x times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. 1 times x is x. And 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. So I can't forget, I have this this positive 2 trailing on here at the end. So this positive 2x trailing on here at the end. And then I have my x times x plus 1. I'm intentionally not going to multiply that out. So if you notice, I have a negative 2x and a positive 2x. So that actually becomes 0. So then that means that my numerator is x squared plus x minus 2, and this is going to be x times x plus 1. So now that I'm looking at my numerator, I'm asking myself, oh, can I factor that? And the answer is yes, I can factor this. So this numerator is going to be x plus 2 times x minus 1, and then that's going to be x plus 1. And I'm going to show you why. I haven't worked this problem out, but I'm hoping that something is going to cancel out. So this here is now my new numerator. Okay, so now I'm going to look at my denominator. So I'm going to I'm marking that because I have to remember to go back to that. So now my denominator is 3 divided by x minus 1 minus 1 over x plus 1. So now I have to get a common denominator. So again, I'm going to multiply each fraction by the number 1, I'm going to see that this here x plus 1 needs an x minus 1, and this, so I'm going to write it in both, and this one needs an x plus 1. Okay, so now when I go to simplify this, I'm going to go ahead and distribute in the numerator, so that's 3x plus 3, and I have to be very careful about this minus. So this minus goes with everything on the inside. So this is going to be x minus 1. And then this is all over x plus 1, x minus 1. Okay, so let's simplify the top. So this is going to be a minus x and a plus 1. So this is going to be 3x plus 3 minus x plus 1. So that means that this is going to simplify to 2x plus 4. And I can actually factor this to be 2 times x plus 2. Okay, so that's my numerator for here. So this whole top simplifies to 2x plus 2 all over x plus 1 times x minus 1. Okay, so for those of you who might be a little confused because I just did some work off to the side to save space, this is what that numerator is simplified when I work it out into its steps. This here now, remember, is my denominator. Okay, so that means I need to put this piece with this piece. So my numerator was x plus 2 times x minus 1, all divided by x times x plus 1. And I'm going to make this a really large fraction bar, so then this denominator, which I will, let's make this a different color, is 2 times x plus 2, all divided by x plus 1, x minus 1. Okay, so now what we need to do, remember that this here is division. So that means then my first fraction, my numerator, is x plus 2 times x minus 1, all divided by x plus 1. So I'm going to skip a step. I'm going to change this to be multiply, and then I'm going to rewrite this fraction. I'm going to flip it. So this is x plus 1, x minus 1, and then 2x plus 2. I just skipped the step of writing this out as a division sign because it's written right here. So now I'm going to look to see if I can divide anything out. And I can. So here I have x plus 1, x plus 1. That divides out to 1. Here I have x plus 2, x plus 2, and that divides out to 1. So that's why I factored way up here, because I had a feeling that something was going to divide out. So then this leaves me with x minus 1 times x minus 1 all over 2 times x. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply out my numerator, and that's going to give me x squared minus 2x plus 1 all over 2x. So that's going to be my final answer. And the one thing I didn't talk about in the last video are restrictions. So here I can see if x were 0, I would have a problem. So I know that x cannot be 0. And then also I need to look up at the very, 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 very beginning. So here x can't be 0. Here x cannot be -1. So I'm going to write that over here. X cannot be -1. X cannot be 0. Here x cannot be 1. And x cannot be -1, because that would make those denominators 0. So that would be my restrictions. So my restrictions are x cannot be 0, x cannot be -1, and x cannot be 1. So I have to make sure that I also have those restrictions mentioned in the bottom.